Hey guys, welcome to lesson 1 of leadership. This is going to be a great course for you. I want you guys to pay close attention. We're getting into unleashing the lion within. It's going to be really fun, really impactful. Going to give you guys a couple action exercises, everything you need to take notes and to implement those notes today. So that's why you're going to have a pen and a notepad. So stay tuned. Let's get it. All right, great. So the first topic is self-reliance and self-discipline. These are some of the things we need to establish when it comes to becoming leaders. One thing I've learned within the military was that I needed to have self-discipline. I remember the first day at training at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was 17 years old, didn't know much about self-discipline at all. I was just leaving a job from doing door-to-door pizza delivery. I was lenient, I was having fun, I was doing whatever made sense to me at the time. Going to parties, doing whatever I wanted to do. That was what was on my mind. So when I got into the military, I realized that I needed some discipline. And what they gave us right off the bat was self-discipline. The first thing we needed to do was figure out how to sit still. It sounds like it's a challenge, but it sounds easy actually, but it's actually a challenge. Sitting still is not easy. You have to stand like this, like a statue, and wait till somebody talks to you in order to speak. So we had to learn first how to control our mouth, when we spoke and how we spoke, and to whom we spoke to. That means I had to figure out who I was speaking to. If I was speaking to a drill sergeant, I said drill sergeant. If I was speaking to an officer, I said sir. If I was speaking to a sergeant, I said sergeant. You had to figure out who you were speaking to, how you spoke to that person, and when you spoke. You didn't just speak to speak. You had to speak at a certain stance, and you had to speak when you were spoken to. These are some things that were hard for me because that's not how I was raised. So I had to learn some self-discipline. But it helped me. It helped me when it came to opening up a business, starting a community, doing things like this. I had to come up with self-discipline so I could focus on the mission at hand. So what we're going to do today is we're going to figure out some action exercises on establishing some self-discipline in your life. I'm going to give you a couple stories on great leaders and the discipline that they established. Everyone from Napoleon to Gandhi to Martin Luther King, great leaders in all throughout history and what they had to do to become who they were. Now, a lot of these guys had a great faith, whether it was believing in Christianity, whether it was believing in something else, a different kind of a God or something like this. Regardless of that, they all had one thing in common, and that was their ability to establish good habits. One of the habits I've learned from a lot of great people is that they wake up before the sun comes up. So if you guys catch yourself sleeping in, like me, that's a bad habit. Get yourself out of that habit immediately. Start waking up at 3:45. When I was in the military, the habit that we established was getting up at 3:45 and working out immediately. Working out right when we woke up. One of the cool things that Bob Proctor always says is you got to put your tennis shoes right next to the bed. The first thing you see is your tennis shoes. Get your tennis shoes on. And Denzel Washington always says is make sure you get on your knees to go ahead and get your tennis shoes so you can say thank you to the one that gave you another day. Cool things that I'm learning is that you need to be grateful, you need to get exercise, and you need to stay educated. Gratitude, exercise, and education. These are going to advance you within the next couple months. Okay, they're going to drastically change your outcome, change the results you're getting, and get you closer to where you want to be. So like I'm saying, write this down in your journals right now, and you got to get exercise, education, and gratitude. You want to always be grateful along the journey. I know Albert Einstein, surprisingly, would always be grateful. He'd always say, be grateful to his God and grateful to the Lord. Because what it did was it helps him, it helps you get into the right mindset. No matter how scientifically you want to see the world, you want to stay in a good, healthy mentality, a gratitude sort of state. Now, since we have self-discipline written down, I want to figure out how we can actually apply some of those habits. So I'm going to give you guys an action exercise. Alright guys, great. So the first thing I'm going to want you to do is get a pen out and a notepad. And then we're going to write down an action exercise that you can establish right now to figure out your habits. Figure out what kind of habits you have when it comes to self-discipline. I want you to first write down 3 things that you know you want to work on. Whether that's exercising more, whether that's your relationship, or whether that's motivation. What are the 3 things you want to work on most in your life? Do you want to make more money? What are those 3 things? Whatever it is for you, just write that down on the notepad. Underneath those 3 things, I'm going to have you write 3 more things that you're already great at. Okay, write those things down as well. Look at the 3 things that you're great at and the 3 things that you want to work on. Now, look at those things. Do a compare and contrast. What is something you are kind of middle with? Something that you're average with. Maybe you're average at getting up in the morning and staying positive. Maybe you're average at getting your homework done or being good at work. Whatever your thing is, what are you average at? Are you average at having good relationships with people? What are the things that you're most average with in your life? So write those things down as well. Now I'm asking you guys to write these things down so you can establish a self-awareness when it comes to your self-discipline. The best thing you can do is to be more aware of what you're lacking in and what you're already good at. One of the things that I had to do that was very uncomfortable when I joined the military was I needed more self-awareness. The thing I'm most grateful for is drill sergeants. Actually, a lot of us say, oh, I hate my drill sergeant, I hate that. But the drill sergeants helped us become more self-aware of the things we were lacking. When I had to transition from a civilian to a soldier, we had to go through a process called basic combat training. It's just 13 weeks in a facility, whether you be out in Georgia or the West Coast, the East Coast. It's different for everyone. I was down at Fort Benning Sand Hill. This is one of the toughest training facilities in the world. These are where the airborne rangers are trained. This is a wonderful training location, and it's where I was stationed at for about 13 weeks. Now in this period of time, they took away a lot of the things we liked. So we couldn't watch TV. We couldn't get our cell phones. I couldn't talk to my family. Out of this period, I talked to my family about 3 times out of the 13 weeks for about a minute each. We had 1 minute on the cell phone. After a minute, they took our phones. Okay, we had about 3 minutes to eat our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Only 3 minutes to eat a meal. So imagine you getting a full meal, greens, meats, bread. Only 3 minutes to eat each meal, right? And if we looked up from our meal, we had to leave the lunchroom completely. Whether you only had 1 bite out of your meal. We were always hungry. I never felt full. I always wanted more food because I never ate enough. And we worked out constantly. The first night we came into the training facility, we had to dump all of our luggage out. Everything we had to dump it out onto the floor. Everyone's stuff was getting mixed up with other people's. We had to do push-ups, sit-ups. There was sweat all over the room. And even when there was sweat, we had to clean it up. So what they did was they would fill up a thing full of water, a garbage bin full of water, and they would kick it on top of our things. So our things would get wet. Sweat was all over the place. Water was all over the place. And so what we had to do was we had to clean the water up with rags. But we couldn't just clean it up normally. We had to clean it up on our knees. So we had to run on our knees and clean it up as a team. So what this did was this took away my comfort. It took away the things I loved to do, the things I liked, my comfort at home. And it put me in a position where I had to become disciplined. Because if I wasn't disciplined, we would get punished. I'd get punished for not being disciplined. So for you guys, I want you to figure out what you're already disciplined with and what you're undisciplined with. The things that you need to work on are the things that you're not very disciplined in. The things that you're already good at, you're probably disciplined at. The things that you're average in, I want you to become great at those things by establishing the discipline to become great. So we're going to figure out what we can do to advance your discipline. Okay, how can I enhance my discipline? What can I do today to do that? And the first thing is going to be focusing on the things you're already good at. Focusing on what you're already an expert in. Okay, don't worry so much about the things you're not. Focus more so on the things you're already good at. And then from there, I want you to figure out, how can I enhance those skills? How can I enhance that? Okay, write down like 3 things. How can I enhance the 3 things that I'm already good at? The 3 things that I'm an expert in, the 3 things that I love to do, the 3 things that I'm great at. How can I become better at those things? Because the thing is, if you can focus on what you're already good at, you'll get better at the other things as well over time. When I was in combat training, I didn't know that. I was always concerned about the things I sucked at. If I could shoot right, if I could do this good, I was concerned. I was always in fear and worried. And as long as I was in fear and worry and doubt about my own capabilities, that led me to fail all throughout the training. It led things to become harder. So I don't want you guys to fear. I don't want you guys to worry. But I want you to focus on what you're already an expert in, so you can achieve those and advance those qualities and not worry so much about the ones you're not. Because we're going to fix those as well. But first, I need you to become great at the things you're good at. Alright guys, great. So now I want you to work on building a schedule that will actually fit in time to work on the things that you're already good at. So for instance, if you're really good at singing, or you like writing, or you're good at connecting dots, building relationships, I need you to create a schedule for your daily life, what you're going to do Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And then I want you to find time to better and work on those skills. So for instance, for me, I like reading. I love reading, and I love building and creating and discovering new things. So I've established 30 minutes to an hour each day to read books, to study, to learn more. Because I know if I stop learning, if I stop reading, I'm not growing. And if I'm not growing, I'm not progressing. What we want to do is figure out ways we can keep progressing. So what you need to do is find the time to establish what you're already great at. Take an hour out of your day. Maybe instead of watching the football game, work on your communication skills. Look in the mirror and practice speaking. Maybe if you want to be better at establishing a business and things like that, take an hour out of the day when you get home from work or your normal routine and work on that business. Instead of going to sleep at 10 o'clock, go to sleep at 11 and spend from 9 to 10 working on what you're passionate on. Find the time for it. So the 3 things that you wrote down, I need you to find at least 3 hours that you can put into each one of those things every single day. Figure that out right now, and I'm going to get back to you after this. Now I know some of you guys are watching and you're like, man, I don't want to do all this work. I thought you were going to teach me. I didn't think I had to do any work too. But the reason I'm helping you guys do this is because there's such an importance in establishing self-discipline. There's such an importance in creating good habits. Because one of the cool things that you're going to get is you're going to find your inner lion. You're going to find what gives you a drive, what gives you more meaning. And you're going to become more motivated. You're going to move on momentum. Because at the end of the day, if you're slow, you're going to be left behind. You need to be first. You need to move in that momentum and that energy. There's this book called If You're Not First, You're Last. And I think that's the reality. If you're not first at what you love doing, then you're going to be last. You want to become an expert at the things you like. Turn that into a field of study and become great at it. Matter of fact, become the best at it. If you can become the best at it, you become more valuable. And if you can become more valuable, you can help more people and ultimately make more money. That's the ultimate goal for you. That's what I'm believing you're going to be able to do if you establish these habits and follow through with them. Okay, there's a lot of great people that know the importance of being self-reliant and having self-discipline. This allows you to no longer become dependent upon others as well. One thing I learned that I had to do within the military was I had to establish the discipline myself. Because I was tired of getting yelled at from other people. I was tired of other people telling me what to do. So I figured, look, I'm going to become the most self-disciplined person here, so nobody can tell me what to do because I'm already on top of it. I was tired of people calling me out every 3 seconds, messing with me. So I said, look, I'm just going to become twice the disciplined soldier than anyone else, so I can make sure I'm on top of it. I know a lot of soldiers personally, a lot of great sergeants that are on top of their game. Nobody tells them anything because they're most disciplined. They're most an expert at their field to study. If you become an expert at your field, people will come to you for help. They'll come to you for the knowledge and the inspiration, the guidance, the teaching. Because you're advanced, you're very valuable in it, but it requires you to be self-disciplined in it as well. I no longer want you guys to treat this as a hobby. Treat those things as an occupation. When you go to work, you make sure you're ready for work. When you go to starting your business, you make sure you're ready for your business. When you go to get sales, you make sure you're ready for your sales. When you work on your hobbies, you kind of take it for granted. These things are the things that could become your gifts. These are the things that become monetized, that could actually impact and change the world. So you need to start looking at them very seriously. You need to start putting in discipline to making those dreams become reality. Turning those dreams into goals and turning those goals into actions by doing something now. It's a habit that's not easy to establish, but it's a habit that you will be able to establish once you can figure out your schedule, your habits of discipline, and work on those daily. It's going to take about 21 days for you to establish this habit into your life and to rewire your mindset as well as your grind set. But if you can move past the first 3 days, I'm going to tell you the next 19 days are going to be like cake, butter. It's going to be easy because you've already gotten through the hurdle. It's always hard getting past the 3 days, getting up at 3 o'clock for 3 days in a row. That's not easy. But once you've established that 3 days, you can move on and you can continue for 21. And I know some of us have some bad habits, but the way we're going to get rid of the bad ones is if we establish good ones. So crush the bad ones. I know it's hard for you to look at, but we're not talking about those bad ones right now. We're talking about the good ones so we can establish those and then we'll work on the bad ones later. Trust me, a habit is a habit. No matter if it's good, no matter if it's bad, it's irrelevant. That's all in your mind. Habits are habits. The way we establish them is just the way we establish them. When it comes to our mind and the power of our brain doesn't know all the time what's good and what's bad. That's our hearts. That's our morality. That's what we've learned over the years. Our brain takes things in for what they are. So habits are formed whether they're good or bad. It doesn't matter. The same way you establish a bad one is the same way you're going to establish a good one. So I want you guys to focus on the good ones that we're going to establish today. And then I want to give you some more tools and tips when it comes to self-esteem, as well as taking ownership. Everything you're going to need to becoming a leader and embracing that lion that's deep within. Alright guys, great. So now I want to get into self-esteem. One of the coolest things that play hand in hand with self-discipline, self-reliance, and leadership. A lot of great leaders like George Washington, Napoleon, Gandhi, Martin Luther King have great self-esteem. I took a tour down to the Washington Museum of Art the other day, and I was walking into that museum, and I saw a lot of portraits of great people. But the one I saw, the biggest ones, was of George Washington. He had the biggest portrait of all. It was 3 stories tall. And the reason it's 3 stories tall is because he really believed in himself. I don't know why he had a 3-story tall portrait, but it was the biggest one in the whole building. I think it's what he looked at every single morning as well. Because he always knew he was a powerful guy. He knew he was able to start a nation, to be the first president of America. He didn't doubt his abilities. He knew what abilities he had. He was ready. He started out as a general in the military, and he went from there to running the country. This man, over years, established habits of self-discipline. He even says, one of his quotes is, the failure of any military is the lack of discipline. That's why the U.S. military is very good, because they establish very intricate habits to create a disciplined soldier. not just on the battlefield, but off the battlefield. Because guess what? You train 90% of the time, and you're only ready for go time 10%. It's all about what you do behind the scenes that will establish your abilities on the scene. And that's what we know within military, is that we have to train every day, and every day. And when we're not training, we're still disciplined. Because when it's time to go, we need to be ready. And a lot of soldiers know that. The Navy SEALs got that locked down. The Rangers know it. And so does the regular Army. We get it. That's why we're so successful at achieving missions and the greatest military on the planet Earth. Is because we have self-discipline of established skills that will empower us and others. One of these guys called Dan Pena, he's a very motivational speaker. He's ran a couple businesses, as well as he's a billionaire. I think he's about 81 years old. He lives in a castle in Sweden. But he grew up in LA, East LA. He's from Mexico, and he grew up broke. His father was a police officer, and one thing his father did was he established discipline in his son's life. He was a very strict dad, but he made sure his son didn't mess around with the wrong people, so he disciplined him. When his son was raised in discipline, it helped him throughout life, becoming a better man, being able to start businesses, to help others, to be a leader. And that's what he currently is. He's 81 years old. He lives in a castle in Sweden. He's a billionaire. He owns several companies, and he's teaching people. He hosts seminars basically once a month that really advance you, that help you become more aware and more confident. Things like this. Because of how he was raised, he knows it's impactful. One of the things that a lot of us don't know is that from the ages 1 through 7 is when you start to establish your identity. This is when this determines whether you have good self-esteem or bad self-esteem. And a lot of the time from the ages 1 through 7, we have established bad self-esteem because of the people in our lives. Maybe they said you weren't good for nothing, or you can't do certain things. And if your parents raised you like that, you no longer have good self-esteem. And this trickles down into every action of your life. What I want you guys to do is rewire, to reset and build good self-esteem. It's so important for your success. Great leaders like George Washington, Napoleon, generals, warriors, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, they knew who they were. They believed in themselves and their capabilities because they established the ability to build their self-esteem. I'm going to give you guys some hints, tips, and techniques to do that today, so I need you to pay close attention. Hey guys, so for the first technique for you is going to be affirmations. I want you guys to establish this into your life. This is one thing I had to work on when I was younger, probably around 19, 20. I was dealing with a tremendous lack of self-esteem. I was getting played, getting taken advantage of. I was working for companies that didn't like me, didn't treat me well. I was in abusive relationships. I didn't have very good self-esteem. I was putting up with a lot of things that I shouldn't put up with. My friends were lying to me. I thought they were my friends, but they were cheating with me. They were basically taking advantage of me. I would have parties at the house, people wouldn't respect it. You see, the funny thing is when you have self-respect, people respect you as well. But you first have to have self-respect to be respected. You have to know who you are and what you're capable, and what you're going to put up with and what you're not going to put up with. And a lot of the time, it's not so much whether this comes to other people, but with ourselves. I'm not going to tolerate myself being lacking or taking advantage of time or not being responsible. I don't put up with that personally. That's why I maintain a habit of discipline. That's why I maintain the habit of doing what needs to be done. So the first thing you need to do is affirm greatness into your life. Now for me, I like to say prayers. I like to ask God to tell me who I am. So for me, it's prayer. But for you, it could be affirmations. Now, the way I used to do affirmations was every single morning, I would tell myself, I am capable, I am worthy, I am powerful. And I would do this in the mornings and in the evenings. Over time, I actually believed it, and I didn't have to do it as much. I'm at the point now where I just have to pray to God, and I already know who I am. I know what I'm capable, so I just need the word from the Lord to remind me. But for you, you might just be starting out and you might really need that help. So I'm going to give that to you. I need you to get a couple note cards. If you don't have note cards, get a piece of paper and write down 3 things that you want to see in yourself. Whether you want to be a better leader, a better speaker, a better husband or wife. And I want you to write down, I am capable. I am worthy of being a good husband. I am a good husband. I'm great at my business. You guys are laughing at me. I know you are. You're like, Mac, this isn't going to change the reality. It's going to help your reality. It starts here and it comes out there. You see, there's a cause and effect. Everything has a cause and everything creates an effect from that cause. Now, your thoughts are your cause. If you can change the way you think, you can change the way you act. It starts here, and then the effect is your action, but your thoughts are your causes. So if you're consistently thinking negative about who you are, what you can do, you're going to get negative results because you're not going to take the action you need to. But if you can change the way you think, and you can be positive, can be confident and bold, then you're going to take the actions that align with your thoughts. Because one of the things about human beings is that we are more than just a body. We're spiritual, we're mental, and we're physical. If your physical is aligned with your mental and your mental aligned with your spiritual, you become an empowered, very powerful person. Because you're in alignment, you're working together. Everything's aligned within your body. Okay? I want you guys to be more aligned with things. I want you to become spiritually well, mentally well, and then physically well. And this is all when you do these things together. So write those things down and then affirm them daily and nightly. I want to get you guys in the good habit of doing this as often as possible. Hey guys, so I'm glad you're doing that. The next thing I want to talk about is excuses. One thing a leader can never have is an excuse. There's this gentleman named Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, and he went to a training. He didn't go to a training exercise. This was a live fire. He was out in Iraq, and they were doing a mission. He ended up shooting a lot at the terrorist compound. But what they didn't know was that their friendlies were going into the compound too. So while they were shooting at the compound, they had friendlies come into it, and they almost had a blue, which is called a friendly fire. This is the worst thing that could happen within the military. It's very, very dangerous, and it happens more than you would think. People actually lose lives in friendly fire, but we don't take it very lightly at all within the military. Actually, you can be sent to prison for a very long time for committing a friendly fire. It's not a joke. It's taken very serious. They have investigations over it. And Jocko Willink was involved with this investigation because he's an officer, he's in charge, he's the leader, he's the head in command. So what he had to do was he had to take ownership. One thing he witnessed was a lot of the guys beneath him were blaming other people. Nobody was taking ownership. So what he did immediately was he took ownership. He said it was my fault. He said, I was responsible. This was my fault. To his surprise, everybody else began to take ownership. The other one was like, no, it's my fault. I didn't do this right. The other guy was like, no, it was my fault. I didn't leave at this time. The other person said it was my fault. I didn't get this equipment ready when I should have. Everyone began to take ownership. But it began with the leader. It began with the one who was in charge. When he took ownership, everyone began to take ownership. And that's the key to actually establishing these habits effectively. I can't have you do the habits and then make mistakes and then blame it on other people. Oh, I can't get up at 3:45 because I got a little kid doing this and that. So guess what? You're blaming your success or your lack of success on your children. That's not good. Or you're blaming the fact that you're not achieving the results you want because your alarm doesn't work. Okay, now get a new alarm clock or use something else to do it instead. There's no excuse. You cannot have excuses if you want to achieve results. You have to take ownership. I've gotten into the habit of taking ownership for a lot of things, even things I might not always be responsible for. Military, I've seen myself get into situations that technically weren't my fault. But I had to learn to take ownership of them. Because when you can take ownership, you can take responsibility, and you can know, or at least be reminded of the things that you're capable of. Now, you can't take ownership of everything, but you can focus on the one in the mirror. Where can I take ownership in my personal life? For me, it was making better decisions on who to leave certain things with, who to trust, who not to trust, who to be around, who not to be around. I realized when I hung around people that didn't take their life serious, I began to not take mine serious. When I hung out with people that drank all day, I began to drink all day. When I hung out with people that smoked, I began to smoke. If I decide that I no longer want to hang around those people, then I can become more enlightened and powerful because of who I'm hanging around. I made the personal decision that I want to be around motivational speakers, people that impact children, that change their lives. And I began to film and help people out like that. Surprisingly, I used to do photography for a motivational speaker. I would clip up some videos for him. One thing I learned was his work ethic. I began to establish such a good work ethic that I had to leave him behind. I said, look, brother, I love what you're doing. I love what we're doing, but I need to go out and do the same thing because I'm ready for it. He was like, good luck with that, man. See ya. I had to take that leap of faith. It's always about taking leaps of faith. Even when you think you're at one level of greatness, you need to leave that behind to move to the next one. It's always about a rebirth and a reframing your image. You have to be able to let the old one go to establish the new one that you're going to receive. So take ownership of your circumstance. Take ownership of the fact that you hate everything around you. Take ownership, importantly, of yourself. Because that's the only thing you really can take ownership of. I can't change the way society is. I can't change the way everything else is, but I can change the way I am. If I can change the way I am, maybe I can change the way you see yourself. Maybe you can change the way your daughter sees herself or your brother sees themselves. But it starts with the one in the mirror. And I know you guys are getting this, so I'm glad you're paying attention. I need you to write this on your pad. Extreme ownership. Okay? No excuses. If you guys are coming up with excuses, talk to me. Trust me, I'm available. You can email me, you can call me, talk to me. Let me know what excuses you have, and I'll make sure you actually destroy them. You need to eliminate them, and I'm going to make sure you eliminate them by establishing good ones. No excuses, but establishing good habits, good reasons. By coming up with your why. The way we eliminate excuses is figuring out why we're doing something. Instead of coming up with an excuse why you shouldn't, come up with the reason why you should, and believe that daily. Why do I get up at 3:45? Because I want to establish good habits, because I want to make more money, because I want to provide for my family. Okay? So I get up at 3:45 because I want to change my predicament. So if you can consistently remember that, you'll believe it and you'll act according to it. But if you're getting up at 3:45 and you're making excuses why you should sleep in or why you shouldn't, that means you're putting that reason above the reason why you should. So put this one up and let's get going. So guys, this concludes lesson 1 for leadership, unleashing the lion within. I'm hoping that these techniques and tools will help you find that inner lion, the real strength within, something that's deeper than you could imagine, something that you always knew you were capable, but somebody told you you weren't. You see, when we're a young child, we believe everything's possible. When you were 5 and 6 years old, you believed you could change the world. You believed you could go to the moon. But your grandparent or your dad or your uncle or somebody said, that's not possible. You can't do that. And so you believed them. You believed what they could. I'm blessed because I had family that would actually tell me I could do more. I used to want to aspire. I wanted to be a limo driver when I was 6 years old and a garbage man. I really wanted to do that. I told everyone, I want to be a limo driver when I get older. I want to be a garbage man when I get older. And my family actually said, no, you mean you want to be driven in a limo. So that kind of changed my mindset. I was like, no, I really want to be the driver, but I guess I could want to be driven in it. So what they did was they actually uplifted my vision. Sometimes people will degrade your vision. What you need to do is ignore that. Ignore it completely. I know you have relatives, people that you hold dearly, but you got to remember you're not living your life to please anyone. If you can't go to sleep at night because you regret what you did or didn't do, that's the worst feeling in the world. You live with you. You don't live with your mom, you don't live with your dad. You live with you on a daily basis. So you got to do what you know you're capable. Stop ignoring that inner child. The inner child within you is telling you what you are capable, what you want to do, what you can do, what you've always been willing to do, but you repressed it. You repressed it for so many years. You repressed it for doing the things you hate. It's still there, and he's not going away. He or she is going to stay within you until you start to listen to it, until you start to take action on it and make it become a reality. It starts with you. Let's go.